All right, how's everybody doing? Mike Jeffers here, and I'm bringing us in a little bit. We've been experimenting with some technical things, and of course, then we had some technical problems coming on live, and that's just the nature of the beast here at 11:36. So I'm not horribly late, but it's a pleasure to have everyone watching today. Chicago Jazz Magazine, Chicago Music Revealed. We are the daily talk show for jazz, rock, blues, Latin, everything else that's happening in Chicago and throughout the nation. We're trying to stick and keep everyone sticking together here throughout the wonderful quarantine session that we have happening. Of course, I'm Mike Jeffers, founder of Chicago Jazz Magazine, and also, and I always preface this, I do all of the different graphic things on my own. So everybody stand by here. I'm going to drop that out, and then I'm going to bring this up. And I'm also the director of programming and entertainment at the soon-to-be opening Epiphany Center for the Arts right there in the West Loop. So hopefully we'll be able to start announcing some live performances that will be happening there on a regular basis. There's 3 different performance rooms there, so it's going to be an exciting time. But of course, right now, we're all trying to get through this entire situation safely and in one piece. So welcome to the show. Today on the show, we've got a couple of different guests. We're going to have our regular correspondent kicking off here in a second, Amanda Capitelli. She's going to be talking about some of the Facebook Live events that are happening throughout the city and also throughout the country. There's a couple of big ones coming up, too, that we're going to touch base about a little later in the week. And then also we're going to have vocalist Joan Watson-Jones is going to be joining us, and she's got a new recording coming out May 1st called Choices. We're going to talk with her about that. And also she's on the East Coast, so it'll be interesting to get her take on what's happening on the entertainment and music community out there, because I'm pretty sure a lot of the same stuff that's happening out there is happening here in Chicago. And it's obviously with everything being shut down, everything closed down, it's important for all of us to stick together and stay connected. Again, please share the show. If you see this and you are watching it, share it out to everybody you have on your list. It's appreciative. If you talk to people, please have them check us out every day. Of course, if you have events, if you have any information coming up or anything happening, leave a comment, send us an email, send us a message, and we will try to mention it on the show. The show's live at 11:30-ish every day. And then it also goes out on YouTube, Periscope, Instagram TV, and our podcast, The Chicago Jazz Audio Experience, along with being on ChicagoJazz.com. So it gets pushed out everywhere throughout the day until the next show. All right, so before we get into and talk with Joan Watson-Jones, we're going to bring Amanda Capitelli in. We started this little segment with her yesterday, and it worked out great. Amanda, how are you? I'm good. So do you have, we talked a little bit yesterday about some of the Facebook Live performances, but I think, one of the things we talked about after the show is we should really coordinate and promote all of these GoFundMes that are happening, or even some of the restaurants are doing takeout and things like that in specific neighborhoods, because everybody needs help in the entertainment industry. It doesn't mean that you have to have live music happening every single night at your place for us to mention it, because all of us, myself being a musician and you being a musician, we hit those clubs and then we go out before and we eat, we hang out, we visit bars, we visit restaurants before we go and see somebody play or before we perform ourselves. So what do you got today? What's coming up?
Time. And there are so many bars in that area, though, not just Murphy's. But a lot of these bars have GoFundMe pages. So, if you have a minute to go check out GoFundMe, that is super important. It helps the employees kind of hang in there for right now. Employees like myself and, maybe some of you watching. So, yeah, Monsignor Murphy's, I work there part-time bartending, and I do a jazz jam there once a month, which is super fun. I can't wait to get back to it.
It's on Sunday nights too.
But in the
You should mention
huh?
you got to plug it. So it's Sunday nights, 8 o'clock, right? Isn't that what it is? Once a month on a Sunday, isn't it the
Oh yeah,
fourth Sunday
when
of
the
the
jazz
month?
jam
Yeah.
starts up, it's gonna be once a month, Sundays, 8 o'clock p.m. I do that with Brian O'Hearn, which we have a blast, and Bill Demis, he plays bass. And then I bartend there on Wednesday nights when they also have a live music with Bob Salone. So that's a blast. But the area, there's so many businesses in that area. There's the Vic. They have a GoFundMe page. There's Smart Bar,
Mm-hmm.
the Metro. There's so many just dive bars. There's Sheffield's. There's Galaxy Bay. That's right on Diversity. The owner, he's super nice, and I know his employees are all out of work right now too. But I could name so many businesses in that area.
Well, I also think it's important for us to mention a lot of those businesses because it's, when people are, watching this show, they're also able to order takeout. They're also able to go pop in there. And also, we're trying to give back and forth. And there's also a lot of GoFundMe's for a lot of those staff, right? The staff people that are, really in need, for lack of a better word, because they're not working just like the musicians. So,
no, we're all a family, and I think we should all support each other if we can. It's not an easy time, but it will pass eventually. For now, we gotta hang in there.
All right, so do you have any Facebook Live events we should talk about today, or we're just kind of talking about the Lakeview area? Get out and support those restaurants and bars that are still there.
Yeah, I wanted to focus on that today. I'll be back on here tomorrow, and I'll have way more to talk about. As a Facebook Live, I did not specifically see anything happening today, but I know tomorrow's Wednesday. So yesterday I talked about what was happening on Wednesday. Can't remember off the top of my head.
Jeannie Tanner and Abigail Rickards are happening.
She has a 7 o'clock show.
Yep.
That's right. With Abigail Rickards and Ruth McMichael.
Jeannie Tanner, yeah, exactly. All right, so till tomorrow, then we'll check back in, and of course, if anybody has anything coming up, hit us up in the comments, leave us a comment, leave us a message, all that good stuff, and Amanda will try to get it on her list, and we'll get it up on ChicagoJazz.com, ChicagoJazzMagazine.com, all of our social spots and all that good stuff. Chicago Music Revealed as well. And all right, Amanda, thanks for checking in today, and we will touch base tomorrow.
I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, thanks, Amanda.
Bye.
All right, Amanda Capitelli checking in. So there you have it. It's important too because if there are people that that need us to mention things on this show, hit us up because then we also blast this whole thing out twice a week on our e-blasts, and we're also putting a lot of those lists together that are being in our e-blast that goes out to like 25,000 people. So lots of good stuff. We're getting connected here in the community, all genres of music. So if anybody's watching this on any of the other platforms, be sure to hit us up and make sure that, we're covering everything. Now, I want to bring in wonderful vocalist that I just recently became aware of and looking over things. We talked a little bit before the show. She and I have a lot in common because she also runs a podcast in addition to be a wonderful vocalist. And she does a lot of support for the jazz community up in the New Hampshire, New England area. Joan Watson Jones, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you on the show. I'm glad we can make this whole thing happen.
Oh, my.
Modern technology, right?
Oh, ain't it grand?
Oh my gosh, I had somebody on the show last week and we were talking and it was like, I was trying to figure out, could you imagine what this would be like if we didn't have social media and we didn't have anything like this like 20 years ago? We'd all be sitting in the house writing letters or looking out the windows, I suppose, and not being able to do this kind of stuff.
Well, I was thinking about the influenza from 100 years ago and what people went through.
Oh, yeah.
And compared to now, and it was horrific back then, but what can I say?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, well, this whole thing it's unbelievable. And you are very similar to myself, where I'm a musician. And then I also started a magazine, and we have this digital thing happening here. We're doing the live broadcast. You are a musician, a singer songwriter. And then you also have a podcast called The Jazz Room that you do regularly. I mean, it's like, we kind of met through music, but I think we're doing the same kind of thing on either coast. So I'm wondering what it's like up in your area in the entertainment industry. I'm assuming there's nothing happening up there live performance wise, right?
Well, everything now is at a total standstill. We're just looking at venues that have already closed before, say, last year, 2018 and 2019, made life difficult enough, but now everything is closed.
Yeah.
So, like, musicians are working very hard on Facebook and doing live shows. The people I know, there are artists that I've interviewed on my radio show who are doing weekly shows and on Facebook Live like this. And at some particular time, I'll work something out myself. But, right now, let me take care of all the other things I'm doing.
Well, and it's interesting. And we're going to talk about your new release that's coming up, Choices, which comes out May 1st. And it's interesting because yesterday on the show, I had somebody a musician, Jim Sellers, who came out with a recording at the beginning of March, and then he had all these CD release events happening and all this stuff, and that all just stopped in its tracks, obviously. But it's one of those things that you've got to keep the wheel moving, and keep the ball rolling. So you've got a new recording, Choices, and it's coming out May 1st, obviously digital distribution everywhere along with CDs. And, in this day and age, it doesn't have to stop anybody from picking up your music and discovering it. And that's kind of why I started this show on a daily basis. I was doing it weekly, but I said, well, let's just do it daily now and let's get the ball rolling here. So it's exciting that you got this new recording. I heard a couple of tracks off of it, and reading about your history. First of all, I want to talk about that in a minute, but it seems like there's a lot of original tunes on this, and the tunes all seem, I mean, it's you, it's your songwriting, it's your voice, but it sounds like there's a lot of different influences in the music that's incorporated into this recording. Am I on the right track with that?
Yes, you are. And the influences, do you mean musically or personally?
Musically, and listening to some of the lyrics personally.
Personally, this was a very personal CD to start with. And it just sort of evolved over a couple. The songs evolved over about 3 years, and I started doing them, and things were happening in my life that brought all sorts of events in my life that were important, so to speak, come up front. And maybe it's just that, time of life or something, but they all came, and I realized there's a lot of stuff that I learned in my lifetime from being a fortunate person, and I recognize that, but also that because it needs to be shared, because some people, for instance, I've sung the song Choices in many times, and I've watched the audience, and when I've sung it to a young group of women, they listen to the lyrics and they go, oh, you could see a look of revelation in their faces about how to look at themselves in life. And that's when I realized that this was not just me, but that there was something that I had to offer and to give to the audience.
Interesting. Yeah, that's that's one of those things that, I play drums, so I don't get to experience that kind of a connection with the audience. And, for you as a singer-songwriter, you get that direct connection. So that it sounds like to me, a lot of these songs that you wrote and put onto this recording had that connection, whether it's with the audience or just emotionally or drawing back from the past, right? Just looking over and listening to some of the lyrics and stuff. So that must have had a big reason why you put these specific recordings on this new album, right?
Right. Yes. It was just, everything just started coming, one song after another. And the wonderful pianist on the CD, Frank Wilkins, and we've known each other a good 20 years now. And every time we'd go for a rehearsal or something, I'd say, "Hey, I wrote another song," and he'd go, "Oh."
He'd be like, "Oh no."
And you know, he would give his input, and next thing you know, we're out there performing the songs on the gigs when we had the gigs. You know, and
I was gonna bring up, because I think that it's very important for somebody that's a vocalist to work with a regular pianist or somebody, you know, guitarist. It could be a guitarist, because you need that one person that you trust to be able to bounce ideas off of, especially if you're writing original music.
Yes, you do. And it's been a blessing, because all the musicians on the CD, we've been working together at least since 2008.
Yeah.
So that's a long time, and they're my family. They're like the big brother. I'm an only child. They're like the big brothers I never had.
Well, it's important to have that relationship. You know, I mean, all of us have played a lot of gigs, and you show up to the gig. What tunes do you want to play? Okay, let's play those tunes and all that stuff. But when you're actually putting something together as a show, or you're putting something together for a recording like this, it's absolutely important to have that trust for, you know, the vocalist, or for whoever, it could be a horn player, to be working with this band, but everybody's got the same goal behind them, and everybody has that same trust on the bandstand or in the recording studio, right? It sounds like that's the connection you have with the musicians you're working with.
Well, that is connection. Yeah. And going back to Frank Wilkins again, the pianist, we've been working together so long. Every now and then he says, "Joan, don't worry about it. You read my mind and I read yours." It is true. I mean, he just sits, he's just, I call it magical, but he just calls it being himself. So.
Well, now listening to some of the tracks on the album, I mean, I'm hearing some one tune with kind of a little backbeat on it, and then it goes into a different feel, and I'm hearing some bossa stuff. I'm hearing some, you know, different grooves, different textures happening. How long did it take you to put this recording together?
Well, we started, we had been working on the songs every time we did gigs. So by the time we got into the studio in 2018 with the entire band to get just the band tracks down, we were pretty cool with all the songs. And it was just a matter of Frank fine-tuning the arrangements. So he would sit down and say, "Okay, we're going to do it this way because this is the recording." And we would talk about how it would be different than doing it live. And I wanted very, very, very much to make sure that on this project, the band got a chance to shine along with me, because we've been working together so long. And I view, when we go out as a group, that we are the show for people, not me and the band.
Right.
We are 4 people together having a lot of fun, and I wanted that to come across on the CD, and that was very important to me. So we got all the different grooves, because I wanted the drummer to have his thing. I wanted the bass player to have his thing. And I wanted, you know, Frank to have his time. So everybody gets a chance to get a feel who each person is. So when they listened to the song, they were putting in their little bit, you know, with their feel and their interpretation of what they're feeling with each song. And that's how we put it together.
Sure. Well, you know, and it's interesting you said that, because when you brought up the point that, you know, essentially you're there to entertain the audience. You're not there to entertain yourselves. And, to me, it's a direct reflection how much fun and how enjoyable a night is if I'm in a club on what's going on the stage. So if the band looks miserable and they look like they're just going through the motions, well, then I'm sitting there and I'm having a drink and I'm like, I feel like I'm going through the motions. This isn't fun at all. So you're actually, preaching to the choir with what you're describing, from a standpoint of performance to the audience, and then being able to relay that back onto your recording. That's the key, right? Because you can have these killer performances, and how often, especially you, you're a radio host and everything else, so you see the same kind of stuff and you hear the same kind of stuff that I do on a regular basis. That, you get the stuff in and you've seen this group and it's killing on the stage and all that. But then when they get in a recording studio, it doesn't match what's happening on the stage. It doesn't feel like the energy that you get from the stage, or that anybody even is like excited about being at this recording session. Sounds like you made a conscious effort to make sure everything was cohesive between what you guys do live and then what you guys do on the recording.
Yes, we did that. And I wanted to bring something else in the sense of the opening tune. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to it, that I call it Drummer Man.
I did. That's the first one I listened to.
Well, the thing, I had a story about this one, in the sense that I love drums, I love piano, and I love guitar. I've played all three instruments, okay,
wow.
At one time. And, but the drummer that I work with, Alvin Terry, is just marvelous. And he has a great sense of humor. So when he plays his drums and he sees me being kind of silly, he does something silly or even says something out loud that just throws the audience into laughter. And it's really nice. But when I was a little girl, I had tap dancing lessons. So for me, and then when I studied drums, I realized, hey, tap dancing is just drumming with your feet.
That's right. That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And so I did the drums for about 3 years. I went out and played gigs when I was still doing Top 40 and had a great time singing and playing. I heard on the drums. I heard it through the grapevine. But I let it go. And then when I really got into the music with the band, I started scatting with the drummer. And the drummer and I just had so much fun because I said, well, I'm not scatting, I'm tap dancing with him.
That's it.
And so, and the influence was as because I had to get permission for this, was Topsy Part 2. Remember Cozy Cole?
Sure, yeah, of course.
When I was a little girl, I loved this song. And what I had learned just listening to him when I was a little girl, I went, gee, I could hum the notes that he was playing on his drums. And it wasn't until I started studying drums that when you tune them, you kind of have a pitch for each drum.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, oh, now I see how it all came together. And then I said, well, I'm just going to scat as a drummer. I can't do it any other way. So that's the way I do it. I relate with the drums, and that's how it goes.
Well, and
we have so much fun with it every time we go on the gig that's why we opened with it.
Well, I mean, and that's really essentially, I mean, when you think about it, right? I mean, when a lot of the pure vocalists without that drumming background, a lot of the pure vocalists have the hardest time being able to rhythmically scat and do something like that and make it up with the rhythms. You already have all that put together because it's ingrained in your system. So it makes total sense the way you just described it.
Yeah.
You know, so let's talk a little bit about your background, because reading up on your background, your mother is a fascinating woman. And it seems like to me that you got a lot of your entertainment genes from her. Am I on the right track with that?
Oh, you're very much right on that.
Wow.
My mom started out long before I came along. And she was from St. Paul, Minnesota, and she went to New York City. And she went to be a secretary at a dance troupe. for a woman named Emma Maitland and for a dance troupe. And then she started dancing because she had studied the arts and so on, when she was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And they got a contract to go to the Moulin Rouge in 1924.
Wow.
And the whole troupe went to the Moulin Rouge in Paris and performed for 6 months. And there were 18 in the troupe. And at the end of the 6 months, the bulk of the troupe decided, we're homesick, we want to go back home. So my mom and the head of the group, Emma Maitland, started their own thing, stayed in Paris until 1926, dancing and singing all around Europe. And around that time, they met a boxer who taught them how to box. And then they did a vaudeville routine where they got up on stage and boxed for about a 15-minute routine, because in those days, women were not allowed to actually hit each other. It had to be choreographed like a dance.
Ah, okay. Okay.
And what they would do is, but they would still have it so it was exciting, and people would guess who was going to knock down who at the end. And they just did it. But basically, Mom said, we just did it because we had to be different than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So what I came out with as growing up was all the time, Mom was, no, you be different than everybody else. Don't try and be like anybody else. So that was the lesson she gave me, dancing and boxing, and then leaving it all and becoming a wife and a mother,
Well, it's amazing because I mean she was at the Moulin Rouge, which is unbelievable, and then she stayed in Paris, and then she came back, and wasn't she? Didn't I read somewhere where she was in Harlem, and she was doing a shows in Harlem and doing a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, she has a huge history. It's unbelievable.
She did a number of things. She was doing the back in those days they were called reviews, and she was in Shuffle Along, U.B. Blake's Shuffle Along, and she was in something by the writer J.C. Johnson, who was different than J.J. Johnson, and they often get confused, but she was in something there, and she was in a number of reviews. In some of them, she and her friends still did the boxing routine in the United States as, as part of a review. And then I managed to find in her archives a license, a special boxing license issued to my mother and Emma Maitland to do exhibition boxing in Worcester, Massachusetts. They were doing halftime at a boxing match for men in Worcester, Mass. Mm-hmm. And that was like in the 1930s after they'd come back and so on.
Wow. That's amazing.
They were like the first Black women to be licensed boxers.
That's amazing. That's unbelievable. I mean, it's really, I mean, so when you were coming up, were you, I mean, obviously you just mentioned that you were playing piano and guitar and drums and all that stuff. She must have been just one of those parents that just encouraged you to do any sort of art form, right? Just get involved.
The thing is that when I was a little girl, she took me to the gentleman who used to manage her acts when she was working. Mm-hmm. And that's where I learned my tap dancing from 4 years old up till I started high school.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I had tap dancing from 4 up until 15 or 16. And so I had all that influence, and they were all old friends. He used to book them in all the places where they worked and find all those gigs for them and so on. So that's what he did.
Back in the day when there were actually people that actually did that, right? now,
Right.
now the musicians have to fend for themselves most of the time and try to figure it all out themselves. So, I mean, it's
Yeah, I know.
yeah, I know, I know. It's crazy. Well, we're talking to Joan Watson Jones, joanwatsonjones.com, the new recording coming out May 1st, Choices. It's just a great recording. I've heard some of the tracks. We're going to do a deep dive and a deep listen to it after the show here and get it reviewed in Chicago Jazz Magazine at some point. And then, the problem here is obviously, just like everywhere else, everything has kind of changed a little bit from the magazine standpoint over here. So we're working through that, as I know everybody is. And, so we're going to get a review on that, but we're doing the show here, Chicago Music Revealed on Chicago Jazz Magazine. And Joan, I want to mention to you too, let's talk a little bit about the Jazz Room, which is your podcast. It's on cyberstationusa.com. Tell me if I've got all that correct and tell me a little bit about it.
Well, I started doing that somewhere around 2005. It's been going on a long time. And around 2006, for the first time, we went to the Newport Jazz Festival. My husband and I said, hey, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
And while we were there, I looked around and I saw the jazz radio hosts from WGBH Radio and so forth walking around and so on. And it just took me a whole year to figure it out, right? Just doing my show, because they did the training and showed me how to use all the equipment. I had to go into the studio, plug everything in and bring the people in for an interview or just do a show with just music and do a DJ thing. But in the long run, it boiled down to by 2006, the station manager said to me, hey, you could get media credentials to go. And I went, huh?
Jackpot.
And I said, okay, let's do this. And so the following year, I had my credentials. We put together a letter and so that I could get to go. And I just walked around and learned things and met the, now I was hanging around backstage at Newport Jazz Festival in the media tent.
Mm-hmm.
So now I got a chance to talk to the WGBH radio jazz hosts like Eric Jackson and Ron Gill and so on. And Eric Jackson sat down to me and asked me I said, guess what? I'm doing a jazz radio show. He said, congratulations. So we sat down on the grass and talked a little bit, tell me about the show, and I told him what I was doing, and they had trained me and given me 15-minute units and then put it up on the air in California.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, wow, you got syndicated right out of the box, didn't you? I didn't know. And then he said, how long is your show? I said, well, it's a half an hour. And he said, well, I gather you just do features, don't you? And I went, tick, 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 tick. My brain went, and I looked at him and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and said, oh, yeah.
Of course.
I've told Eric this story more than once. And it was like after listening to Eric for all those years, and then he said, well, you're just doing features. I said, oh, I get it. So that's how. And then I just went to the Jazz Room from there. And at the other, also, I had also been producing a public access television show.
Okay.
That I had done back in the 90s. And I just kind of used the format that I had for the television show. I just plugged that in as the half-hour radio show. So that way I just started interviewing everybody I could, and everybody gets a half-hour feature.
That's awesome. That's great. So people can pick it up. I know there's links on your website, joanwatsonjones.com.
My website, cyberstationusa.com, is one place. You have to go to dqrm.com/the jazz room. And if you have problems there, what I do is on my website, joanwatsonjones.com, I have a page called the Jazz Room. and I put up at least the shows for the month to let people know what they are, and I've been able to put the tracks in. And then my station manager says, we can hook up our DQRM page to your website so that people can go to Cyberstation and your website and go listen to. So I have a podcast page called joanwatsonjones.com/podcast. And there, what they do is they have all the shows up for about a year, which I can't do on my website. I only put up for a month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, people don't realize the amount of time it takes to not only do the feature, do the show, but like for this thing, do this, and then you have to pull the tracks in, you convert, you drop, you post, all that stuff. I mean, it gets to be time consuming. So if there's a way to push that out, that's the ideal situation for you, obviously, right?
Yes. Well, what I do is now I work mainly at home, and I had been doing that after I went and figured out that I didn't have to go to radio station to do the shows. I bought a digital recorder and got myself so that I would be able to produce the shows at home, and I've gotten myself so that I can do all sorts of things, and I can go out and do a 20-minute interview with somebody, and then I have to take my time and sit down and then in post-production put it together so that it comes out as a nice story about the person.
Yeah, well, it sounds great. I listened to a couple of them, and it sounds dynamite, and I'm glad that we're connected now because we're doing a lot of similar stuff here. You're on the East Coast. I'm in the middle of the country, so we need to stay connected. And
yes.
And I want to make sure everybody knows to go over to joanwatsonjones.com. Here are the new recording choices. You can pick that up. I know you can download it and everything starting May 1st. We'll, of course, link everything up here. And congratulations on this new recording and all your success. I mean, you're doing so many different things here to promote music and to promote your music, but also other people's music. And, I'm happy to connect with you because it's everybody's got to have the same mission here, especially in this time of the situation where everybody needs as much help as possible in the entertainment industry.
I agree with you. You're repeating the things I say to people all the time.
See, we're on the right path here. We are
both on the same page, on the same path, so to speak. But it's good because I find it's a whole lot more fun when you meet more people doing the same thing you're doing and sharing ideas, or at least saying, hey, yeah, I'll help you out. You help me out. We can, it's about working together.
That's the main thing. You got to work together in order to grow this thing and keep things moving. So, well, Joan, it was great meeting you. Thanks for being on the show. And I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the recording, and also looking forward to getting some updates here down the road from you on how things are going, not only in your neck of the woods, but also with the new recording and how things keep moving here, because it's a exciting time for you coming out May 1st choices. Everybody pick that up. JoanWatsonJones.com. Thanks so much again, Joan.
Thanks so much. And you're on my email list now forever. As Shirley Horn would say, you won't forget me.
Excellent. All right. Thanks. Take care.
Take care now. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Joan Watson Jones. All right. She's great. First of all, check out her new recording. It's coming out. Choices comes out May 1st, as I mentioned. JoanWatsonJones.com. But her podcast / radio show, it's really interesting. And she's covering a lot of different people that I don't cover because there's local artists out in the East Coast. And I discovered like 3 or 4 different people I had never heard of. And it's fascinating. There's a lot of these little shows happening throughout the country. And, I'm going to try to start connecting with all of them since we've all got the time. We're all in our home studios here working and keeping things happening. So thanks again for watching Chicago Music Revealed here, Chicago Jazz Magazine, chicagojazz.com. Of course, all the information, we always put this podcast up on Chicago Audio Experience. That'll go up later on today. There's a couple that are delayed a little bit, but all that's going to be pushed out later on today. And then, of course, we've got YouTube, we've got Instagram, We've got ChicagoJazz.com. And now the new site is up, ChicagoMusicRevealed.com. The website's up. All of the shows are up there along with the podcast. So you can just go to that one place, ChicagoMusicRevealed.com. Again, thanks for the Epiphany Center for the Arts for helping present this show and doing all of the great stuff that Epiphany is about to do as soon as we can actually get up and running over there. So stay tuned for that. But if anybody has any performances coming up, anybody has any news we need to know about, leave us a comment. Obviously, things are here throughout the day, and we will try to see. I'm trying to do all the artwork myself here. We will try to get some notices out. Amanda Capitelli is going to be joining us tomorrow again with her update on not only who's playing on Facebook Live, but also some of the clubs, some of the bars, restaurants. Does not have to have music in it. If you have GoFundMe's happening, push this thing out. Let people know to connect with us. We will push it out on all of our platforms. We send out emails. We send out all the social media posts and everything else on all our platforms. So we want to make sure we connect the entire community. Again, I really appreciate everyone checking this out. Now, tomorrow, we're going to have a very special guest as well. It's going to be Lydia Liebman. She is an international music promoter. She does incredible PR for musicians throughout the entire world. She's going to be on from New York, and we're going to talk to her about not only the scene in New York, what's happening there, but she talks to musicians throughout the entire world. So we're going to get a good grasp on what's happening throughout the entire world with some of these national and international musicians during this entire situation. And also on Thursday, Mike Steven from WGN Radio, he's going to be my guest on. We were on the show the other day on Saturday morning. I'm going to be posting that. I just got the link, so we're going to post that up. My interview with WGN Radio from Saturday we'll throw up on all the social media platforms. But Mike Steven is going to be on Thursday, both shows 11:30 a.m. this week, and then Friday might have a very special guest. We're working on a couple of things right now, so we'll stay tuned for that. I'll make an announcement hopefully tomorrow who's going to be on the show on Friday, and all that good stuff. So I want everybody to stay safe. Everybody stay healthy. You go outside, wear a mask. We're getting close to hopefully curbing this situation and taming it down a little bit so we don't have to be as nervous walking around. Hopefully at some point we'll be able to get out, see some live music again. Heard some information about some of the festivals, the neighborhood festivals that I'll mention tomorrow, but there's more cancellations, not good. So we'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow as well. And, again, stay safe, share this out. Leave a comment, give us some insight, give us some input, let us know what's happening. Hopefully I'll see you somewhere out on the scene. And if not soon, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow on the next broadcast at 11:30 a.m. Thanks for watching. See you then.